everybody. Welcome to Spanglish Sports World, NLL Lacrosse Talk. I'm Gary Groob. Seen on Spanglish World Network and Zingo TV, channel 249 and 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, please make sure to rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks. Also available on all smart TVs 2016 and above. Now on NLL Lacrosse Talk, allow me to introduce my guest this week is John Arlotta, owner and general manager of the Georgia Swarm. Welcome.
Thanks, Gary. Good to be here with you.
It's my pleasure. And like when we talked over at the Rochester, Georgia game, it is just an absolute dream to have you on the show and to get into your brain and how the lacrosse world works from the inside.
I'll do my best.
Like I told you off air, I went through my retro jerseys. I dug out an old Minnesota Swarm jersey for you. So
that's perfect. Yeah, I like that. I saw it immediately. I've got a few of those still as well.
Yeah, they're not as many as there used to be, but yeah, they're pretty. I love the designs. I love designs on these old ones. Anyways, our first question to all of our guests is always, how did you get involved in lacrosse? Usually it's what made you pick up a stick, but what made you get involved with lacrosse itself?
Well, just to be careful, I didn't pick up a stick for a long time, and I still try not to pick up a stick when I'm around our players because I'd lose all my credibility with them. My lacrosse, I guess I would call career from a business and a management standpoint. Started when I was in Baltimore. I was running a company there, and one day my landlord came down and said, "Hey, I want to take you to a Johns Hopkins game." He was actually an All-American at Johns Hopkins, and I said, "Well, I'd like to see it." So he took me out, and that was during the Paul Rabel era, and I think they won a couple of championships in the 3 or 4 years that I was in Baltimore, and he was taking me out to games, and he calls me his good luck charm.
Well, you when you were in Notre Dame, when you were in school, you had the opportunity to play, but I believe you passed on that one, did you?
Yeah, no, Notre Dame, when I was there, this was a long time ago now, Gary. When I was there, it was a club sport, and actually I was in Army ROTC with a couple of guys that were also on the club lacrosse team. And so they said to me, "Hey, why don't you come out and play lacrosse?" I said, "Well, I have no idea what it's all about. I grew up out east, but in Buffalo, and we didn't have lacrosse in Buffalo back then." And so I said, I don't want to embarrass myself, but I went out and I watched a few games, and I thought it was really cool then. But really, until that Baltimore experience, I had stayed away from lacrosse all those years.
Right. Your wife played, though. Just to put that on the record.
My wife did play. She reminds me of that all the time. And around the Swarm organization, the coaches and myself, we call her the assistant general manager. She's got great input for us. Let's put it that way.
Right. She's got a good lacrosse sense too, right?
That's right.
So your family, now that you're out of Notre Dame, gave a huge gift to Notre Dame, and Arlotta Stadium is there now for the lacrosse program, men and women. Let's talk a little bit about that and how that came to fruition.
Yes, well, it was, I guess, a little bit of serendipity because I was in Baltimore at the time that we were approached by Notre Dame about doing some work with them in some way, and I had just been involved in taking a company public, so I was pretty busy at the time. I couldn't really get overly involved, but I said, "Hey, let's start thinking about what we might do to help Notre Dame in whatever way we can help." And as we were kind of going through a process, we ran across the fact that lacrosse, which I now had started to get to know through the Johns Hopkins experience, was a great sport at Notre Dame, and they had done very, very well. But when we went to watch a few games at Notre Dame, I'll never forget the one we watched during the playoffs. Maryland was playing Notre Dame, at Notre Dame. And during one part of the game at the end there was so much rain that when the ball was shot, they actually couldn't find it in the mud in front of the goal. And that kind of convinced us that we needed to see if we could help in some way to really provide a better situation for the players there. And we sat down with the coach, both the men's and women's coaches, and said, hey, if we were able to provide a stadium, help provide a stadium, would that make a difference to you and your program? And of course, they said, absolutely, it would. It turned out that we were one of the first lacrosse only stadiums in the country. I think at the time we came on about the same time that Denver did with their stadium. And by the way, we lived in Denver for a few years and got to know the person that donated that stadium out there. So it was a nice coincidence.
Right. Now, this is quite the state-of-the-art place. 2,500 permanent seating. Our largest crowd was over 4,500. Notre Dame men against Army in 2014. Now, just last year, you had it dedicated with a plaque. And I just want to read what the plaque says. Lacrosse, known as the creator's game by the indigenous peoples who originally played it, is the oldest team sport played in the Americas. The University of Notre Dame was honored to dedicate Arlotta Stadium on October 16th, 2009, with a competition between the Haudenosaunee Nationals and the Fighting Irish. Through spirited competition and with universal respect, we continue to honor the sacred history of the game and those with whom it began. It's a lovely plaque. The significance of it for you.
Well, it's very significant for us as a family, and it touches a couple of different points that I want to make. But before I do, I just want to tell you we broke that record this past weekend. Notre Dame playing Maryland. We sold out the stadium and had 5,000 people there. So we broke the weekend record, if you will. So the first of all, there was when we opened the stadium, Coach Corrigan invited the Haudenosaunee to come and play the first game there. And it was a wonderful event. The chief actually blessed the field at the time with a native blessing, which was very moving for all of us. And a number of years went by, and actually recently my wife said, we need to update the stadium and do some things that are going to really separate the stadium at Notre Dame from some of the other venues at Notre Dame. And we did a number of different things to update it this past summer. Actually, the summer before it was finished this past summer. But one of the things that we came up with was to actually put a plaque at the front of the stadium. And you just read the plaque. We wanted people to understand that we're coming to these games, the roots of the game. And one of the reasons that's so important to us is our professional team. We actually, I believe, have more Native American players on our professional team, the Georgia Swarm, than any other team in the league. And through that, I have just had a tremendous education, not just about where lacrosse started, how it started, but what it means to Native Americans. And I've been blessed to have the Thompson brothers on my team. And of course, Lyle is a tremendous spokesperson for lacrosse and what it means, the roots of lacrosse. He talks about it all the time with our fans. And of course, he does that outside of the Georgia Swarm as well. He's just a tremendous spokesperson. So I've been educated over the years personally. My wife has as well. And we both looked at each other one day and said, you know, I don't think that a lot of people that come to the stadium at Notre Dame understand the roots of the game the way we do. And if we could put a plaque up, it would at least cause them to maybe pause and think and do more research and really understand the roots of the game and what it has meant to the Native Americans. So that's the reason that we put the plaque up. It's as much as anything educational. Lyle talks all the time about his primary goal is to educate people in any way that he can on the Native American culture and what lacrosse means to it. So it's our small way of adding to that education. And I believe that people, when they come and read that plaque, will pause and will say, let's learn more about this. And as a result, they're going to learn more about Native Americans and what Native Americans have been through in this country and in Canada, and where they are today and what this game means to them.
What have you specifically learned from the Native American view of lacrosse? One item that you can point out to us.
One item. I'm going to take one that was maybe one of the toughest situations that I've ever encountered, either in business or in lacrosse. We played in Philadelphia a number of years ago, and we were ahead in the game, and the announcer yelled as Lyle was running down the floor, "Cut his braid." And I have to tell you, that was an incredible moment for us as a team, for Lyle and his teammates, and for us as a family. Went into the locker room after the game and could see the distress on our Native American players' faces. Was fortunate enough to be able to take the Thompsons out to dinner that night. And I asked Lyle at dinner, I said, please educate me and help me to understand. I have my own thoughts about why that was so impactful, and I was very upset personally because of that. But I wanted to hear Lyle, and it was an amazing answer that he gave me. He said, first of all, when they put us in the residential schools, the first thing they did was to cut our hair. So this is a very important component for us. That much I understood.
Right.
But then he went on to say, he said, John, I play for the Creator, and I play as hard as I can for the Creator. I don't play with anger in my heart. I play for the Creator. He said that was the first time since high school, when they were, abused playing lacrosse by a lot of teams, that I played with anger in my heart. And that, what an education that was for me. I mean, they truly play for the Creator. They truly play the game because it has meaning for them. It's a medicine game. It's a way to settle disputes. And so all of those things kind of came together for me personally that night. And it's a hard story to tell, and sometimes I hesitate to tell it because I don't want to bring back memories for Lyle, but I think he appreciates that he educated me that night. And he handled this in such a way that I think he educated many, many other people in the follow-up that occurred as he was, using Instagram and so on after that event. So
I remember the backlash after that because it was immediate.
Exactly. So that was probably the one single thing that I would point out. But I've learned so many other things along the way. Lyle and his brothers do a camp for us in North Carolina at the Cherokee Reservation every year. I try to get to that camp as much as I can and listen, and they tell the story of the animals to the young kids there and how the animals played a lacrosse game. And so there's so many things that I've learned along the way. Recently, we took the chief of the Cherokee in North Carolina to Notre Dame to do an event in which he talked to the people at Notre Dame that were Native Americans and talked to the students at Notre Dame to educate them. So the education goes on beyond what I just described. We all need to continue to try to educate in any way that we can what the game means to them and what they've been through and how they play it today and why they play it.
It has to be really hard to know that at some point something like that's going to happen and to have some sort of template on how to deal with it. And I guess you could say that's part of the medicine of the game, right? Where, an illness presents itself and then the game overcomes the illness and becomes the medicine for the illness.
That's a great summary. It really is. And I'm sure that Lyle would feel that way because I believe he had an even bigger impact when that happened by being able to tell the story, not just to me, but to many others.
as usual, sometimes out of bad things come opportunities to educate, to learn, and to be better.
My mother used to tell me there's some good and all bad, John. You just have to find it. And we found it personally that night.
Yeah, we find out what people's intentions are. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about the Swarm in itself. Minnesota was originally 2004. The Minnesota Sports and Entertainment Group put it together, taking the old Montreal Express rights and put a team there. Now, in 2008, you decided that you wanted to be into the lacrosse world. You were already successful in the health sector. What brought you into that? I want a sports team and I want more a lacrosse team.
Well, I continue to say a lot of this is kind of serendipity. It was not a strategy. It was not a plan. I go to Baltimore and learn lacrosse at Johns Hopkins and watch them win national championships. I end up at Notre Dame looking to help them in some way and see a lacrosse ball stuck in the mud during a playoff game. And then I get more and more involved in lacrosse at Notre Dame. And a friend of mine was actually buying the Minnesota Wild. And he called me the night before he was buying the team. And he said, John, I just found out I'm buying a lacrosse team as well. And I know you love lacrosse. And why don't you buy the team from me? I was retired at the time. Right. And we can both be in St. Paul together. You know, you can watch the Wild games and I'll watch the Swarm games. And so, believe it or not, that's how it happened. I happened to be, if I wasn't retired at the time, it probably wouldn't have happened because I would have been too busy.
Right, sure.
But that's serendipity, the way all of this evolved. It just was kind of meant to be.
Now, you added a thing to your son's bucket list, Andy. His thing was always to work alongside you. And when the Swarm came along, this was his opportunity. And you and Andy more or less took the reins and did the GM and presidency and all the day-to-day stuff. Talk about just, your day-to-day activities with Andy and getting the team up and moving from the Arlotta perspective.
Yeah, well, I would have to say that we both have learned a lot over the years. And I was very fortunate that Andy, he was also in healthcare, but I was fortunate that he wanted to learn about sports and be involved in sports and wanted to have the opportunity to work together with me. And so he moved to Minnesota, and we immediately started down a road of learning about sports and the sports business. And he ran the team, and I helped him from that perspective as he was learning. And then eventually he ran all the business side, and I just focused on the lacrosse side, right, which has been really helpful to me. So that's how it evolved, and how we got started in Minnesota.
You had decent teams and you had a good fan base in Minnesota. If I remember right, around 8,000 as a regular crowd, and very, very educated people, because watching games from there, and really educated, good fan base.
You're right. We did, and it was great being there. I believe that the fans helped us a lot, and I think we helped the community. Sure. We actually had 1,100 kids playing box lacrosse when we were there. We had a league that we created. The great thing in Minnesota is that there were boxes available once hockey stopped. And the ice came down in a lot of the boxes. We could use them to have kids playing box lacrosse. So that was our major contribution. I still get calls from people that played in that league, coaches that coached in that league. One of them coaching a college program now, and brought his team down a couple of years ago. So I feel like we impacted the community from a lacrosse perspective. We played the first outdoor game there. We brought Army in to play Notre Dame, and that was the first college game played in in Minnesota. Now they have a club team up there. And, now the other league is actually going to be playing some games up there. I think they have played games up there. So I think we had an impact, and certainly the fans were great and had an impact on us.
Sure. Now, I guess it's around 2015, the XL Center isn't renewing your lease. You say, fine, we're going to go look elsewhere. And Georgia comes to mind. Now, you're going into a place where a lot of people don't know box lacrosse. They know field. They don't know box. You're going into a new demographic. You don't have a huge fan base, and you basically have to build from the ground up. That's a daunting task. Talk about, obviously, you're organized and you have good people, so you're able to do this. But talk about the initial getting in there and, okay, let's get it started.
Well, unfortunately, I put that on Andy. I was back working again, and he only had 6 months to put that together and move the team, which was really, really hard.
Right.
But he did it, and he got it going. The first game was an awesome game. I still remember it. It was against Toronto. We won the game. I got the game ball back there on the mantle. And it was, I think at that time we had about 8,000 people in a 10,000 people arena for that first game. So we were really excited about that. However, what we learned is that doesn't necessarily just carry over.
Sure.
There's a lot of work that we had to do. It was a novelty, so people came out that first game, but there was a lot of work that we had to do to really build from the ground floor up. We weren't going to get that sort of attendance for the other games, and so we've had to build from a lower number than that to get us today to a point where we're about at that level for most of our games. So yeah, Andy did a great job, not just, getting it together, bringing people in and hiring people, getting tickets sold, but also selling sponsorships. So our sponsorship support down there is really terrific.
Also, your marketing, though. Your marketing was excellent because a lot of youth programs, and the same thing you're doing in Minnesota, only probably bigger now in Georgia. And again, I've always said, if you market to an adult, you're going to sell one ticket. If you market as a party, you sell a ticket. If you market to the kids, you sell tickets to mom and dad, uncles and aunts, grandfathers, grandmothers, and brothers and sisters, and you get a lot more ticket sales done, and you get long-term base. So the youth programs were a huge part, and patience pays off.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And if you look at our demographic in Atlanta, certainly the family is our key demographic. So it proves your point. However, what is great about our game and our league that maybe is a little bit different than outdoor lacrosse is that it attracts non-lacrosse people. And so you've seen an evolution from the early days when it was, virtually all families, kids who were playing lacrosse, bringing the family out, maybe some businesses and so on, to a point now where when you look at our demographic, there's a lot of non-lacrosse people that just love the fast action, the physicality, the skill level of the players. So that demographic has changed over time, and it's true throughout our league, which I think is one of the great things about the National Lacrosse League is that we really bring lacrosse to a pretty broad group of people. So we've seen that grow. Now, the thing that we want to do is to continue to grow those lacrosse families and introduce more of the box game. So this past year, we acquired a box league from someone who had it in place for a number of years. And we ran it for the first time ourselves this year. And we had about 450 kids playing in the league. So we would have more, except there aren't as many places as we had in Minnesota. We had rinks in every community we could play in, but in Georgia, we only have a few places we can play in. So we think that we're off to a great start with that, and we think that it's going to help us develop our long-term ticket base of lacrosse people as well.
Right. Now, day to day, you as a GM, you had two really huge accolades almost immediately. NLL Executive of the Year in 2009, General Manager of the Year in 2012. These are big deals. Now, you're in with a, still relatively new in it, but you are in with the people who've been in it all their lives, and you have overcome and name these big awards. That's a pretty big deal.
Well, it's not me. It's a lot of people. Sometimes you get these accolades when you don't totally deserve them because there's a lot of people that have really made it happen. The executive of the year, was also very much, I think, about the fact that I was, involved at the league level as well, and as the chairman of the board for a while, it helped me to learn a lot more about the league and the sport. The GM thing was, I have to say, I took some chances on that because I actually decided to go more in the direction of trying to work through the draft than work with the older player base that we had. And so the fan base wasn't particularly happy with me, and unfortunately they blamed Andy more than me. I felt bad for him because he was there all the time, and I was in Denver at the time most of the time. But we took a chance, and we sort of changed the way that we went about building the team, more from the draft than from experienced players. Traded away a lot of players to get draft picks, and was very, very fortunate. One of those players I ended up with was Lyle Thompson. So again, you talk about serendipity. There was a lot of luck involved in that. So I was hopeful, but who could predict that you'd end up with the first pick in the draft when you trade for a pick a couple of years down the road?
Right. But you also had in mind the kind of player that you wanted to have on the team, and integrity of players, character, not characters. And that played off big time by the time 2017 rolled around and you win the championship. I was lucky enough to be in Saskatchewan for that. And in fact, basically the pass in overtime happened in front of me. I was sitting on the restraining line there, and it was just a surreal moment to watch the Thompsons be involved, the last 10 seconds of the game in regulation time to get us there to overtime. It was just in a game that just is indulged in my mind. I've been to about 20 championship games, and that one stands out really as, two or three that really stick. Caleb Toth's last second goal in Toronto. That's one of them. And this one, of course. So,
yeah. Is there, if you have a question, if not, I'll give you my reaction.
Yeah, I'm more in for the reaction because that was like really the pinnacle of it all, and you win the championship.
Yeah, well, yeah, it worked. One thing I do like to say though when we talk about these things is that everybody has a different way to build a team, and every GM approaches it in a slightly different way. And the way that we approached it worked in this case, but it's also worked in other ways. And, sometimes I have to remind our coaches that there are teams that do it in a different way. It's not that one way is right and the other is wrong. It's that you build a team and you look at your strengths and weaknesses and you try to fill in. And that's what we did with that team. We did it through the draft, but we also brought in Mike Poulin because we needed a goalie, and we brought in Jordan Hall because we needed a veteran presence. So everybody does it a little bit different. In a lot of ways, we were fortunate that the draft picks turned out the way they did to get the players that we got to have us be able to compete. But that moment, so I told you I have a couple of balls on my mantle. The other ball I have on my mantle is one signed by Lyle and Miles, and it says Thompson to Thompson, and it's signed by both of them. It's that game-winning ball that I was fortunate enough to have our coaches give me. So, that was a moment just by coincidence when we were out at Notre Dame this weekend. We were with a number of coaches, and we happened to tell that story about that game, because for me, it was the highlight of any sports moment that I've ever had. And my wife was describing the moment in a slightly different way than I was, because she said, I want to remind you that we all jumped up and we started running from the suite down to try to get down to the bench. And they let all of you guys go and they tried to stop me. So she, being the Philly girl that she was or is, she didn't let them stop them. She got down there as well. So, but yeah, we were telling that story this weekend. It's still my favorite sports moment, obviously, of all time.
We've had both of your coaches, both Sean and Eddie, on the show, and you're talking about a world of knowledge, and just the way they're able to portray their message across is very, very player friendly as well as fan friendly. So they're big assets to the organization in building as well.
Absolutely, and they were with us in that championship. Dan Ladouceur was our offensive coordinator, and he's now head coach of the Riptide, which I was really pleased to see. When the Riptide called me, I said, absolutely, he's going to be a great head coach, and that's a great promotion for him. I'm excited for him, and you can see what he's doing with that team there. They've really gotten better over the years. So yeah, them, and we added a couple of coaches this year. One is our new offensive coordinator, Andy Secor. And he's doing a tremendous job. And Alex Krepensek, now shows that I'm getting a little old, because Alex was on our championship team in 2017. And now he's a bench coach for us, working with the defense and our video stuff. So really excited to have Alex with us.
Absolutely. Now, having Lyle on the team, and again with marketing, the league has gone with the initiative of Every Child Matters. And with so many Indigenous players, the responsibility of having really the modern day best player in the league on your team and marketing around Lyle. What do you feel? Is there a little extra oomph to go with that idea, or is it just the entire team on its own?
Well, Lyle's the face of the franchise. There's, nobody. No one would say anything different, and the players wouldn't say anything different. And one of the reasons is that he works harder than anybody else. Off the field, when he gets on the field, he's just incredible. He's got a motor like no one else. It's not just about scoring goals for him. It's about defending, stopping transition. He's all over the place. And for my money, that's what makes him the best player in the world. So yes, we obviously build around Lyle in terms of our marketing efforts, but we've got some other players that our fans love as well. Shane Jackson has been with us for a long time now, was with us when we moved to Atlanta. And, he's a great headline for us. Brian Cole is one of our assistant captains, has moved down to Atlanta and is part of the community down there. Of course, our new goalie, Brett Dobson. Brett moves to Atlanta during the season, and he's doing a tremendous amount of work in the community as well to help us, grow the Swarm brand there. Right, so, sure. There's others as well. I don't want to miss anybody, but there's still no question that, Lyle is the face of the franchise, and we're blessed to have him on our team.
Right. We've had Brian and have had Brett on the show, and they've talked glowingly about it. And Brett, especially talking about his goaltending programs and things like that, that are moving forward. Is there a lot of challenges getting all these players up to or down to Georgia for games? I know when I talked to Rich Lisk shortly after they talked about the move to Ottawa, he was talking about saving around $10,000 a game because so many players lived up around Nepean and Ontario and all over the place. It's easier to get them to games. Is there a challenge going so far south to get everybody to games?
No, not really. In fact, I think it's an advantage. if you look at the teams that are around the Toronto area, they have the advantage that many players, want to go back eventually to those markets and play in front of their families. Our advantage is that we get sun and they can wear their shorts when they come down to Georgia and get out of the snow. And the flights are great. There's so many flights to Atlanta. It's the busiest airport in the country. Last time I checked, I don't think that's changed. So there's a lot of flights in and out. It's not a problem for us. If anything, I would call it a benefit. There are some players that want to be in the South and want to, come down. We've got 4 or 5 players in market right now enjoying the weather and their time in market and helping us to market the Swarm. So I believe it's an advantage.
Right. I actually was in San Diego for a game on the weekend, and I flew back with a good chunk of the SEALs team back to Toronto. So I understand that, and they all seem to take to it very, very naturally now. So
yeah, yep.
Now, let's get to you as a Board of Governor member, and let's talk a little bit about the state of the league and where it's headed now with all the TV deals and things like that. The stability is probably stronger than it's ever been of this league.
No question about that. And we have a wonderful commissioner who is just working like crazy to help us get to the next level beyond that. Even, it's still great, but it isn't there yet.
Right.
We want to become the next major league, as you can see in our promotion. So we've got a great commissioner and a great staff at the league office that are working really hard to make that happen. And then each individual team, this is, it boils down to every market is a little different. So every market, it requires a great group of people, which we have, great group of owners and great group of marketing people and ticket sales people and so on around the league, better than I've seen in the time that I've been involved, which is, I get almost 17 years now. So yes, the needle is pointing up for the league. No question about that.
Right. Now, there's always been rumblings. Will this ever become a full-time league? My question to you is, one of the things that is the selling point is the affordability. Unlike hockey or basketball, where tickets, at least in Toronto, are just through the roof. This is still where you can bring a family and enjoy the game. If it becomes bigger seasons and obviously player salaries, the costs that are going to be afforded down, are we losing a fan base by building towards a full-time league, do you think?
Well, it's a really good question and an interesting question, because at this point in time, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about becoming a full-time league.
Right.
And yet we have to strategically, the Board of Governors has to be thinking about that. And there are people thinking about it and working on it. I think it's still far enough away that it isn't something that we should be expending as much time on as we should be expending time on getting commercial relationships at the league, getting broadcast rights increased at the league. Those things that I would call blocking and tackling, tactical things, come before the strategic side. And the strategic side, when it comes to full-time players, brings with it a lot of complex issues that we would have to work through with the players union, with our business models, and so on. So I don't think that should be the priority at the moment. I think we should be building the commercial side of the business at the league level and building our fan bases at the local level as the primary priority for all of us. And that's where we should be putting our resources as well at the moment, with an eye towards the future of what happens when we do become the next big league, major league, and what's it have to look like when we get there. But it's far enough away that it's just a smaller issue that we talk about and we shouldn't ignore, and we should start thinking about and working on But the real focus needs to be on the blocking and tackling that I just described.
The consistency of the league has been maybe one of the reasons why Gary and people like Gary think it's possible, because it's kind of been improving in the sense that teams are settling into where they are. It looks as though they're well organized, each and every team. There aren't any real weak links within the league, which, brings spring to the idea that maybe, another step. What would be a step, if not, to raise the salaries of the players? What would be the next step in your mind that the league needs to achieve towards that end goal? Not get there, as you've established quite clearly, you're not anywhere close. But what would be, let's say, a next step that would head towards that area?
I think a big broadcast deal would be the critical element, and that we're not there yet, and we're not there yet in terms of viewership and our ability to leverage what we have to get that at this point in time. I believe we're going to get a better deal than what we currently have, but a deal that would make us stop and say, okay, now we can move in the direction of a bigger and maybe more well thought out strategy relative to full-time players. That would be the linchpin in my mind, getting a big broadcast deal, or a much bigger deal than what we have now.
Would it be?
I think we're going to improve that deal shortly. However, it needs to be bigger than that, I believe, to get us to that point.
Especially if you look back just a few short years ago, where you are with broadcasting today. So, I guess we could consider this the baby steps heading towards that place, which would be big league contracts with TV networks.
Exactly. And we have invested a lot of money in our broadcast over the last 3 or 4 years. The teams have. We've all anteed up to really improve our broadcasts and get them to a level that is big time. And when you look at our broadcasts today, they're significantly better than they were just a few years ago. And when we talk to broadcast partners, they see that. So that was step one, and we invested in that to help get to the point that I just described.
All right. Lacrosse in general, obviously it's going into the Olympics in 2028. What is your opinion on sixes?
I think sixes is great. I think it opens up a lot more possibilities for kids playing lacrosse, and I think it's great because it's very similar to our game, the indoor game. If you were just somebody that knew nothing about lacrosse and you watched an outdoor game, let's say the Notre Dame Maryland game this weekend, and then you watched our indoor game, and then you watch sixes, you say, oh, well, that's the indoor game, right? Well, no, it's being played outdoor, but it has a lot more similarities to our game than the current outdoor game. So I think it's good for us. I think it's good for lacrosse in general, which means that we get more kids involved, we get more people playing. We get into the Olympics with it. That brings a lot of positives and raises the level of lacrosse in general, not just box, but outdoor lacrosse as well. So I think all of that is great. I love the sixes game, and I'm excited to see what it does in the Olympics.
It speaks to the fact that not every country has a whole bunch of hockey arenas that they can turn into a field of play for indoor lacrosse. So that's, I think, what this speaks to. It speaks to the fact that it's a game that they can play almost anywhere because all you need is a field.
Exactly. And look, there are obvious differences between us being in Minnesota and us being in Georgia in terms of places to play indoor, right? We had to look really hard to find a place for our box league that we acquired, and we have it. It's working great, but there aren't like 10 or 15 of them around Georgia like there were in Minnesota. So yes, you're absolutely right. This opens up the opportunities a lot.
Plus getting an extra 280 countries to take a look at the game. For all the traditionalists there, well, that's not the game and blah, blah. Once we get them to look at the game, then we can educate. Then we get the guys like Lyle to give all the background and all the medicine and the creator's game and all the rest of it. But let's get the eyes on it first.
I agree completely. Yes, absolutely.
All right. The one thing that that we've never touched on was expansion in this league. Being part of the Arena Lacrosse League, doing the media for them, there are so many NLL caliber players that don't have an opportunity just as yet. Do you think it's on the horizon? I know Frood, when he first came in, wanted stability for all of his franchises before worrying about expansion. But I think we've kind of hit there, and we have that stability that we're looking for, more or less. Do you think that's in the cards, up and coming? Maybe not in the next year or so, but soon.
I believe there's a lot of interest being shown in the league. Yes, for sure. I mean, look what happened up in Montreal with the game that we did up there. We'll probably do something similar to that in another location to introduce the game. This was reintroducing the game, as you pointed out at the beginning, Gary, up in Montreal. But I believe that the interest level is as high as it's ever been, if not higher. On the other hand, I agree with Brett. We have to make sure that our base is a great base, the foundation is strong, and that we're building the things at the league level as well that I just talked about a few minutes ago that begin to raise the league to an even higher level. That needs to be the first priority. And the second priority should be accommodating, good owners that might want to come into the league over time, of which I think there's a lot of interest being shown.
Right. Well, before we had trouble getting the blue chip ownership, now it's all blue chip ownership. So it really shows how far that this league has come over the last number of years. And again, the TV deals and the other media things, I think, have a huge part to do with it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's spreading the word to a lot of other people, and our franchise values have increased, but not at a level that would cause eliminate a lot of people from the opportunity to have an ownership in this league. I think the future is very bright when it comes to expansion. However, we have to make sure that what we're doing right now is really, really solid as we bring other teams in.
Right. Because Sakavitz, when we had him on the show a couple of years ago, he's talking about, now there's a lot of layers, and ownership groups can make money, not just by opening up the doors and throwing a carpet down and hoping for the best. Now there's again, we're talking media, we're talking television, we're talking fanatics for merch and other things. So there's a number of different layers where the interest of big rollers can get their interest piqued, because there's a number of different ways to make money in the league.
Most of us don't get into this to make money. Let's just be clear about that.
John, you don't come into this to lose money either. And I think one of the biggest things the NLL has done the past few years is they've come up with an idea of yes or no, or approximately what kind of template to put together so teams can be successful. That the experience of the league having to hand an owner to say, okay, here's a template. I realize you're in Georgia. I realize you're in Nova Scotia, and I realize there's some differences there. But basically, sports is sports, and a template helps every new owner in a game to understand from the people who've been there for a while.
Absolutely. And it's interesting you bring that up, because before I got on this call today, I was on the executive committee call for the league, and we were talking about our next league meeting, in which we want to have some presentations on best practices that teams are finding in each particular market that we can take elsewhere. So you're making a really, really good point, and it's something that we're focused on at the league level as well.
I'd love to take credit for the point, but I learned it from the way the NLL operates and when they handled expansion over the past few years. But I'll take the credit temporarily.
Right.
I really want to thank you. This has been a very, very quick hour, as you can see, for taking the time with us and talking swarm business and league business and everything else, as well as family business. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
No, thank you, Gary. Nice to meet both of you. Gary, glad we ran into each other in Rochester. So happy to have done this, and thanks for your support of the league, guys.
Anytime.
Absolutely.
It's only been about 13, 14 years. It's only been a couple of minutes. Only a couple of minutes.
You're catching up to me.
I don't think we'll ever catch up to you, but we're more than glad to slip into your slipstream. So we appreciate what you do as well. If I can add to what Gary's comments were, we talk about strong ownership, but I think one of the biggest things that lacrosse has on its side is the passion of the people who are involved in it. And that goes from the tiniest tot that plays the game to the oldest, person that's been involved with lacrosse and how they stay in it. We've spoken to people 95 who are still involved in the league. So we have an idea of how important the community is and what you call the family. And it is the maker's game.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And, it's been a wonderful ride for me. Learned a lot, and really great to meet you guys.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Yeah, take care.
Okay, for Gary Groob and John Arlotta, I'm Candid Frank Stanisci. Thank you for watching NLL Lacrosse Talk, seen live Thursdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish World Radio Network. For lacrosse talk, news, entertainment, and other sports programming we offer, please check out spanglishworld.ca. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and live it. Thanks for watching, everybody. Pick up a stick and have some fun.